as it was coming closer to the time that I knew would be the time for me to go back to work, I started feeling in my body like my heart was beating fast, like my nervous system was responding to stepping back into this role. And it was like I couldn't ignore it, right? Like I cannot ignore the fact that my body is literally responding to knowing that this is coming. And so I did decide that I was going to walk away from that job. And I was in a space of like, oh shit, I got to figure something out. And so I started in entrepreneurship and coaching as a necessity to take care of my family. And it's just been like the roller coaster that I didn't even know I was getting on, that I've been locked into for 5 years.
So before we get into this episode, I want to share something special with you. After organizing to scale so many businesses, the thing that I get asked about the most is how can I scale with all of these tabs open in my brain? And so I created a free training on exactly how I organize to scale businesses in 90-day sprints. If you would like to get access, you can go to stacygray.com/scale. That's Stacy with an I, Gray with an A.com/scale. Welcome to another episode of The Rooted Founder. I am excited about today. I'm speaking with Dom, and I will introduce her in a minute. But what I'm excited about is so many female entrepreneurs are acknowledging that we have been building our businesses in a very masculine way. And we're being asked to build it differently, build it in alliance with our divine feminine in ways that are very unique to us. And so my guest today is very much in that space, and we have an opportunity to talk about the journey from building in our masculine to building more in our feminine, to building integrated, to building in alignment, and the journey of that can be messy, it can be intuitively guided, it could feel unnerving, but it can also feel grace-filled and guided. So we're going to have that conversation. So Dom helps aspiring women entrepreneurs build mission-driven businesses to escape the 9-to-5. She also supports organizations with stress reduction and mindfulness services to enhance well-being. As a coach and somatic practitioner, Dom integrates sound, breath, movement, and strategies for transformation. She is the founder of Transformation University, YOU, Move and Still, and hosts the School of Healing podcast. She is an author of Hold Space to Heal. Oh, I just love that title so much. And a proud girl mama. So Dom, I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. I can already tell from the vibes that it's going to be good.
Yes. So in my own entrepreneurial journey, in all of the entrepreneurs that I've coached and been privileged to be running mates with along the journey, we all have hit a ceiling at some point. And there's that saying that you don't have the business you want because you haven't become the leader to build it.
Yeah.
And I call that hitting that ceiling kind of enough is enough moment. Like, I can't keep operating like this. I've got to do something different. So in your entrepreneurial journey, what was your enough is enough moment that made you step away from your 9-to-5 and step into entrepreneurship? And I think in light of, us formerly being men in women's bodies, what did that feel like in your body? To have that enough is enough moment and being called up to something different.
So I love this question so much because I've been in a very reflective state over the last couple of months as I'm closing out a 7-year Saturn return and stepping into another 7 years. And so walking away from my job happened in this last 7 years, but it wasn't, I feel like the universe tricked me a little bit because when I stepped away, I didn't know that the entrepreneurship would be the next step. I quit my job in December of 2019, and it was a result of going on maternity. Well, I had been advocating for better benefits, better pay, like all of the things in that role. And so the entire time that I was there, I was always having to ask for more and validate why I deserve more. And I had done so much and proven myself, right? And I was still fighting for the basics. And so when I got pregnant with my second daughter, I was asking for them to give me a longer maternity leave. I think I was asking for 12 weeks and they only wanted to give me 6. And I was like, I told them, I was like, listen, if y'all don't give me this maternity leave, I'm going to quit. And I think that they thought that I wouldn't. And at first I probably thought I was BSing myself. But I went on maternity leave with the 6 weeks. And as it was getting time for me to get closer to going back to work, because I was still kind of like, am I about to quit my job? You know, like I was still kind of in a gray area as it was coming closer to the time that I knew would be the time for me to go back to work. So it would have been January of 2020. I started feeling in my body like my heart was beating fast, like my nervous system was responding to stepping back into this role, right? Because all of the things that had gone on in this role, stress of, you know, healthcare and all those things. And I was also very unfulfilled in that role. And so I walked away. I was on maternity leave. I felt extremely like, you know, happy just being in a moment of pause. And as soon like that month, it was like December hit and I started to just feel in my body. And it was like I couldn't ignore it, right? Like I cannot ignore the fact that my body is literally responding to knowing that this is coming. And so I did decide that I was going to walk away from that job. But when I quit my job in December of 2019, my original plan was just to be out for 6 months on an extended maternity leave and then to go back to a 9-to-5 job. We all know what happened in March of 2020, right? So it threw a slight wrench in the plans. And so my enough is enough moment was December of 2019. But that's when I say I kind of feel like the universe tricked me because COVID happened and I was in a space of like, oh shit, I got to figure something out, right? Like I have a family, I have 2 children, I have a partner, we have a mortgage, like, and I don't have a plan. And now is not the greatest time to be re-entering the workforce. And so I started in entrepreneurship and coaching as a necessity to take care of my family. And it's just been like the roller coaster that I didn't even know I was getting on that I've been locked into for 5 years.
I love this. So sometimes I think that if we knew the entire roadmap of what this roller coaster was, we might not get on it.
I would have never got on it. I would have turned around running the other direction. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then it is that courageous first step because then you take that courageous first step, not knowing. And then it's been 5 years now, almost 5 years ago.
Yeah.
People show up, opportunities show up. I call it grace. Like just along your roller coaster ride, grace shows up in different people, in different opportunities, in different ahas, in different events, seminars, conferences, connections. So along your journey of the roller coaster, what has surprised you about the journey that you didn't expect? Besides it being a roller coaster.
Yeah. This one is like, because I was just talking about this on my podcast. I had a recording earlier. I was talking about how much I was not aware of my trauma and my wounds and my blockages and my limiting beliefs until I became an entrepreneur. It was like I got to walk through life doing well at most things and like excelling, and it was easy. And like, I just, thought I was amazing. And then I became an entrepreneur and it just stirred up all of the things from childhood and unresolved trauma and unworthiness and, limiting beliefs. And I had to face so many parts of myself to heal to get to this space, right? Because I was afraid to be seen because of all the things that happened in my past. And so you can't be a successful entrepreneur if you are afraid to be, you can, it's not going to be easy and probably profitable, depending on your industry. But for how I was being called, it required me to be seen. And I was just so afraid to do that. And I've had to go through so much healing and personal development and just unlearning in the last 5 to 7 years of my journey. And I'm like, had I had any idea of that, yes, right, and just all that was going to be required, that would have been another turn around and go back the other way moment. I was naive. I was just like, I'm going to start a business and it's going to be great. And, all of those things. And the reality of the evolution that has been required for me, it still blows my mind sometimes, actually. I I don't know if we talked about this before we hit record, or I heard it when I was listening to your episode, but one of my main like beliefs is that when spirit, God, however you view your higher power, gives us an assignment, right? A mission, entrust us with a mission. He gives you the vision, but there's becoming that is required for you to hold that vision, right? And so I've had to go through so much becoming over the last 5 years to be where I am now, where I'm finally in a space of like, okay, I can hold this mentally, spiritually, I can balance this with all the things. And the becoming process has just been so much more than I thought it would be.
This is incredibly common. In my company, we say you can't organize and scale your business unless you organize and scale yourself first.
Yeah.
And when you talk about coming face to face with all of your trauma and all of your wounding, it's hitting that wall of trauma. It's hitting that pain line. It's hitting that ceiling. It's hitting that enough is enough. It's hitting that threshold of the psychological construct that I've perceived life through up until this moment is not sufficient for my assignment.
Yeah. Oof.
And the becoming process is such a faith journey because it's handing over the reins to allow yourself to be deconstructed, to be reconstructed in a container that will allow for you to be the vessel to channel, to guide, to carry out the assignment. So along your journey, I know you wouldn't have gotten on the roller coaster if you knew. I don't know if that's totally true though, because I feel like when you're in the muck of it, like you're in the cocoon and it's gooey and it's messy and you're being spun around, you think, what was I thinking? It's like being one of those Bikram yoga classes halfway through and you're like, this was a really bad idea. But then when you emerge and you realize you have wings, then you get to change your colors and you get to fly. It's like, I'm so happy I endured the transformation because now I get to step into this calling. I get to step into this assignment and I get to be a blessing and get to empower people and remind them that they have wings and remind them that they have a mission and a crusade here and to be a guiding light for that. So as you have gone through all of this, what has anchored you?
Two things. The first one is motherhood. And motherhood was such a catalyst for my spiritual journey also. Like when I look back to when I felt called to begin to meditate and to be still, I was pregnant with my first daughter, who's now 8. And I grew up Christian in a very religious household. And it was like Christianity was forced upon me, like as long as you're under this roof, you're going to do this thing. I never really, like, there's always been some parts of religion that I questioned and didn't really connect with, but, it was just the thing that I was exposed to. And then as soon as I got out of my mom's house, I was like, whoo, I don't got to do that no more, right? Went off to college, lived in my 20s. Like, I always believed in God or a higher power, but I had an extended period of time where I was just kind of like out in the world, like not really tapped in or anchored to anything. And when I got pregnant with my first daughter, that's when, again, I started feeling just my womb, like started feeling me to stillness and meditation. And I've been on that journey since. It's been a process of building the consistency to be where I am now. But, that's when it started. So motherhood is my first anchor. And I feel like I remained in entrepreneurship when it got really hard because I had this belief, right? Even though I couldn't see it, life is limitless, right? Like life is limitless and it gets to be whatever I want it to be. Like there was a part of me that knew that even when my life wasn't reflecting that, right? And I was like, I want my children to believe this, right? Little Black girls that I'm raising in this world, like I want them to believe that there are no constraints and they don't have to be boxed into anything. But I have to prove that, right? To myself first, right? And so that has been the thing that has kept me showing up day after day when like I felt like I was just getting beat up by the universe. I'm like, no, but I'm showing them and I'm showing others. Like, if you can imagine it, if spirit gives you the vision, like if it's on your heart, it's because you're capable of it. So that's the first anchor. And the second anchor is in March of 2020, right around the time that COVID started. That year, COVID like shook some things up for me. I was again unemployed. I talked about that story. Newborn, 3-year-old, marriage that was on the rocks. We've since divorced. Unemployed. I talked about unemployed. So I was in a space of like being really low, like, and I don't know how to crawl and figure my way out of this. Like I have done it a lot of times in the past, but I don't got no answers for this situation. And so I started meditating and praying to God, hoping that spirit would throw me some sort of lifeline. Like I'm just out here kind of, please help me. And then one day when I was meditating, I got an intuitive download that said every day for the next 90 days, focus on your mind, your body, and your spirit. And this was right around the time that quarantine had just begun. So we ain't have nothing else to do. And so I started doing that. I started meditating consistently. I started just building a relationship, cultivating a relationship with my intuition and my spirit, also connecting with source, also pouring like positive things in my mind. So being aware of the content that I was taking in, listening to podcasts like this. Like I started doing all of those things consistently, moving my body every single day, right? Physical movement. When I tell you that I was a transformed version of myself at the end of that 90 days, I had lost like 15 pounds physically, but it was just like I had come out of a fog. It was like I was awake for the first time. And I've continued that daily practice, that mind, body, spirit practice now for almost 5 years. And that is the other thing that keeps me rooted, like constantly giving my body time to release stress so that I don't continue to burn out and hit walls, because that's the way that I existed before, taking care of my body, making sure that I'm feeding myself positive things and I'm always growing in the midst of building the dream. And then being very intentional about stillness so that I can hear from my intuition clearly and so that I can connect back to source. Those two things are what ground me.
I love this because I feel like it's very common for there to be a component of community, which motherhood in a sense gives you a purpose, belonging, so a sense of community, but then also this sense of being at home in yourself, which is the mind, body, soul part of it. And our external is a representation of our internal.
Yeah.
And so in business, I like to say that you're only 90 days away from a completely different business. And what you just shared is so parallel to that, because you're only 90 days away from a completely different human. Like you can be somebody so different in 90 days. And sometimes we are afraid to start, or we're overwhelmed by the process. And oftentimes I like to say, just plan tomorrow. If you just were intentional with tomorrow and then intentional with the next day after that, at the end of every day, you're setting intentions and then you're creating a future self by your just daily actions that is not overwhelming. So something that I think that many of us entrepreneurs, and I know you and I connected on this already before we hit record, is this idea of how much action and how much embodiment. And I like to joke, like we're all type A, AAA personalities, and we get a lot of significance and a lot of validation and a lot of feel-good hormones in our bodies by checking things off, making things happen, being a go-getter.
Yeah.
And sometimes we do that at the expense of our embodiment, of our well-being, mind, body, soul, like you said, over your 90 days. So what have you done to help bring more harmony into your really faith in action, right? You get your download, you know that this is my assignment, and then you love the feeling of the embodiment of sitting with the divine in that container. And then there's also a call to execution. And so the blend of those two, how do you navigate that?
Whew. Definitely one that I'm still working through, actively learning. So I can talk just based on my experience, right? My body started forcing me to do things differently because it started impacting my mental health because I wasn't doing enough of a good job with finding harmony. I can be very, very goal driven and like head down and focused, which in many ways is a positive thing, but it can be like too much on the far side, right? Where there's like nothing else exists. It's great because it's an energy. It's great because as a gift, it's an energy that I can like offer to other people to kind of like get them going when they need that, right? So the people that don't have as much of a structure in that way. So it's beneficial in that way, but it can also be, again, detrimental if I lean too heavily. And that's what I did when I restarted. Well, when I jumped back into coaching, it was like I got the assignment at the top of the year. I kind of took a few months to move through that because I didn't really want to step back into it and just to prepare. But then as soon as I got into it, like as soon as I hit go, I was gone. And I was just like head down, working every single day, like focused on this goal, trying to generate income. And my mental health started suffering, right? Because I wasn't coming up for air. I wasn't coming up to enjoy life. I wasn't making time for joy, for play, for love, like any of those things. And I had been here previously, a similar space in December of 2022, and I spiraled, stress, worry, all, being too goal driven, and it led to a very dark depression. I had to start an antidepressant. I had to crawl my way out of that place. And so when I found myself back here 2 years later in the same exact season, being in the same exact place, this time I chose to do things differently. I didn't get lost in the stress and the worry and spiral and like, okay, now I'm going to double down and like start working really hard. I had resources and tools that I could tap into, but I was like, I'm going to come up for air. Like I'm going to honor how I'm being guided and I'm going to come up for air. And so I'm in that process now of like actively building a business, but also prioritizing things outside of this, like making time for rest. And when I tell you that choosing differently and not stressing and like going into survival mode, it was like, man, we've been in January for a few days, and January has been amazing. And it's like all I had to do was just like trust, right? Like, because that's what it comes down to. When we are in spaces where our business isn't performing the way that we want it to perform, we go into a survival mode, right? And oh, I got to figure this out. And that's what I did the last time around. And I overworked myself into a depression. So this time around, when I felt that same place, I had a choice to make. Are you going to go back to that same place, or are you going to trust? Trust yourself, right? That you're capable of doing this. Trust the universe. Trust that the universe has your back. Trust spirit. Trust how you're being guided. And with the help of my mentor, I chose trust. And it's just been like this year has started off so beautifully. And I've opened myself back up to dating again after being, single and very intentionally going through a healing process and giving myself time to heal from my separation and divorce. But I'm like open to love again in that way. And like, that's already been, really nice and fun. And I'm doing fun things, roller skating and karaoke and, just like, I'm just living more, right? I'm just saying yes to the things, even though like, I could have, well, money or time. Like, I'm just like, I'll figure it out. And, I'm just allowing myself to have joy. And already I've just seen such a shift in my business, and it's like so beautiful. So I don't know if that answered the question. That was a really long response. The short answer is that I made a decision that I was going to like enjoy my life as I'm on this journey.
Yeah. I like to think of it as playing our way to success. And in my own journey, I've had health, my body screaming at me, asking me not to build the way I was building, taking the courageous step, like you're saying, to to trust. And I categorize trust in 3 ways. There's self-trust, there's team trust, and there's tribe trust. And really anchoring into those trust containers, and also taking aligned action. In my journey, like when you double down and you're like, oh, my business isn't performing the way I want it to, I'm just going to do more. When you do that, you're doing it from a place, like you said, of survival mode. And so it's scarcity. Yes. And so you're out of alignment. And so even if you took 4 to 6 hours or even a whole day to get back into alignment, the execution that you did in those other 4 days would be far more impactful than if you use that entire first day to just start playing whack-a-mole in your business. And it takes a lot of courage, and it takes that trust container that you're talking about. Like, I trust myself that when I am in alignment, I will fire on all cylinders. When I am in alignment, my team will fire on all cylinders. When I'm in alignment, I will aggregate the tribe and the people to me, because I'm a magnetic when we're in alignment. And it takes a level of patience, which you mentioned, rest. And I read this really good book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it's very much about this concept of creating space, creating margin, creating joy and play, and opportunities for the divine or a miracle to show up that you didn't plan or you didn't expect. So many times we think we are our mind, like it is our logic that is making it all happen. And my mentor of mine, Kim Kiyosaki, said that we decide with spirit and implement with logic.
I like that.
Yeah. And it really feels like that's what you've done along your journey, where you allowed space for your connection with the spirit, and then you took action in alignment with your logic. And maybe, I mean, we're still in it, but maybe we're solving more of this on our own journey of really choosing into a co-creation versus hard charging on our own. So I know you have a somatic toolkit that you use. And I know in my own personal journey, and a lot of the entrepreneurs that I've been privileged to run with, we hit hurdles. We hit fear, we hit doubt, we hit overwhelm. So what are some of your somatic go-tos that help you when you hit those fear, doubt, overwhelm moments in the journey?
So the first thing that came to my heart as you were talking, you said you have a somatic toolbox, and I like to call it a toy box, because when you think about tools, you think about fixing and like work and like, oh, this is gonna be effort, right? If you think about an actual toolbox, you're coming in to fix something. And so we already have enough shit on our plate. Here's another thing that I have to do. I got to fix myself. I got to work on myself. It's going to take time. But if you think about it like a toy box, it's like I get to explore and be curious and allow myself to experiment and see what feels good to me and like what resonates with my body and like what makes me feel good. And it just makes the journey a little bit more like juicy, right? So just a little like word shift there as I talk about the things that are helpful for me. One of the probably most important things is that physical movement. I am very active with moving my body every single day. I enjoy working out. I am in a space where I'm like challenging myself to push my body to farther than I've allowed to in the past. Like I feel like I've always gotten to a space where it's like, I mean, I'm kind of good here. I can stay here. But this time around, I'm like, what happens if I just like continue to be consistent and do the thing, right? So I'm working out a lot, but I'm prefacing that to say like it doesn't have to be working out. Like if you want to do whatever thing brings you joy and makes you feel good and like you can commit to, do that consistently. It might be walking, jogging, swimming, Zumba, like whatever it is, but like move your body consistently, because when you do that, you're releasing stress, right? We hold stress in our bodies. And so if we don't allow our bodies to release those endorphins and, release it, that's how we continue to get to the space of burnout, because it's just piling on and piling on. And so I always say that every day that I start my mornings most like 85-90% of my time. I think except for Sundays, I start my mornings with physical movement. So it's like a reset for the day. I'm releasing all of the things that happened yesterday and all of the stress about the business and my children and whatever else is going on when I'm at the gym or, however you're moving. And so it gives you a greater capacity for this present day, because I'm not walking into today with yesterday's stress and baggage in my body, right? So that's really important when it comes to just like how we navigate and deal. And then another practice that has been helpful for me, and I kind of look at these one and the same, is just like building a mindfulness practice. So meditation is I feel like mindfulness and meditation get used interchangeably, but they're a little bit different. Meditation is like the actual physical practice, the sitting on the cushion or sitting in the chair, allowing yourself to be still. And as a result of that, over time, you become more mindful, right? You become more aware of your thoughts and, you're able to notice stuff. So I am also a consistent meditator. I do that pretty frequently in the mornings. And breath work. As we were starting this call, I felt like my heart start to like, I podcast all the time. I have my own podcast. I'm on podcasts, but there's still a level of like, I'm putting myself out there, right? That like still activates my body in a way, but I'm more aware of it now where it doesn't throw me off completely. I just took a few deep breaths, right? And so I would also offer that is like when we feel the fear, sometimes we want to cower. It's just like, just notice it and just breathe through it, right? It's just new. It's just different. And your body is responding to that. But taking a few deep breaths, you're able to calm your mind down. And so I would offer that as a practice also. And there's a ton of different ways to breathe, but just deep breaths, right? And the beautiful thing about breath work is that we always have access to the breath. Sometimes you don't have your yoga mat. Sometimes you can't go for that walk, but you always have your breath. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed or afraid or, stressed out, angry, just breathe. The most important thing is as you breathe to focus on the exhale, a very long, slow exhale, because that triggers, I don't like to say the word triggers anymore, that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. And so just long, slow breaths. And that helps a lot with quieting the mind when you're having those emotions. And the last thing I'll say, and this is one that I'm learning for myself, is that emotions are just energy in motion. And so sometimes we'll have an emotion and we'll get stuck in it, right? Just recognize that it's just moving through you. Like you're just a conduit for this to move through you. And so trying not to get stuck in the emotion as much as possible is also really helpful, because it goes from being like something that you muddle in for a week to something that maybe I just spent like an hour or two in and now I'm good.
Such good insights. I want to double tap on the emotion, energy and motion. And sometimes I have witnessed in my own life, and then a lot of people that I have the privilege to be connected with, how we don't pause to even recognize that there is an emotion bubbling up. Like that is an alert system to us. And then because humans are meaning makers, like we're looking for a meaning for it. And so I'm curious in your own practice, how when, say, emotion comes up, you miss a deadline, a sale that you thought was going to come in didn't come in, you're disappointed, you're frustrated, you're embarrassed. And how do you acknowledge the emotion and then release it without attaching identity to it or value to it or meaning to it in a way that just layers on pressure and it gets stuck in you?
Yeah. Two things. The first one is that for me in this season, mentorship has been really helpful for that process. Over the last couple of years of entrepreneurship, the last 5 years, I've had a lot of coaches. I now have my first mentor, and I'm recognizing that there's a difference in the two. And they say that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Like right at this point where I'm closing out this 7-year cycle and stepping into another, this amazing human like comes into my life to guide me, right? To be a guide to the next level, the next portal. And so when I have those moments of tripping out over business and, something that happened or didn't happen the way that I wanted, he's been really helpful in like grounding me, I would say, and like eyes on the prize, right? Like it's cool, right? We don't get lost in the emotions. Like, so he's been really helpful. And prayer. There was something that happened last week I wasn't sure of how it was going to go with the client. I wasn't sure. And I started to like, and, I had the conversation with him and he's just like, it's cool. Like, just give it some time, right? Just give it a couple of days. And I just was like, I don't want to keep dwelling on this. Like, I've put a lot of energy and effort into thinking about this and like, I can't do anything, right? I've done as much as I can do. And so I said a prayer. I believe that I journaled about it and then I just released it, right? It was just like, I'm giving it to you, God. Like, if it's meant to be, make it happen. If not, like, that's cool too. And that was helpful for me. So the prayer, the writing it down, the releasing it, right? Like physically, verbally releasing it. And then it turned out like it worked itself out. But an older version of me would have worried about that for days, like I would have been stuck in like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like I still did my part in little ways to like, keep a pulse on the thing. But it was just like, it's out of my control. If it's meant to be and I'm meant to guide this person, right? If they're ready to accept this invitation, they'll come back around. And if not, like, that's okay too. So, yeah.
I love prayer as like a mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
And in that mindset shift, we're acknowledging that this isn't happening to us, it's happening for us. And circling all the way back to the beginning of the conversation about becoming. These little things happen where we get frustrated or we're disappointed or it didn't go as planned. And to use prayer as the mindset shift to surrender and acknowledge that it's happening for us transforms the container of who we are to embody the assignment.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful evolution.
Thank you for like naming that. Like that is nice.
Yeah. I was studying something and the leader was talking about how of all the things that the disciples asked Jesus about, they asked him most about prayer. And I thought that was interesting because I was raised in a religious home and I don't consider myself religious. And I don't think it's really rule-based. I think it's really a personal relationship. And that's really what prayer to me is, or meditation or mindfulness is it's about a personal encounter with the ethereal. And we can call it God, universe, divine, source, whatever we want to call it. And it's really an internal shift that happens in us when we acknowledge that we are a small representation of something so much bigger. And my business partner and I like to say that, God is the visionary and we are just the executors. So we don't have the whole picture. We only have a part of it. And when we get to walk our individual journey in alignment, we get to be co-creator with something so much bigger than we even have the capacity to hold. But we can hold our small piece of it by recognizing that the journey is happening for us so that we can be the container that it can hold the assignment.
That is beautiful. Like we have to pause there for a second. You said God is the visionary and we are the executors. And I was just like, oof. That is almost like a reframing for me it like totally shifts things, because I'm a clarity coach and a business strategist. And so I'm talking to women about, what's your vision? What's your vision? What's your vision? I'm asking them that question a lot. And now it's like, I mean, mind, body, spirit is integrated into my practice, because like I can't have one without the other, and I have to teach my clients to move that way. But like a better question is like, if you don't know, like go consult source and see what source wants you to do, right? Like go get more clarity on the vision, be still, meditate, pray, like go get the answer and come back. And so I love just the shift in like, we do have the vision, but like the vision is really being held by source, and you're just like doing your part, like you're just executing your part of the assignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had this awareness too, because I speak in a lot of language around the entrepreneurial operating system, which is the visionary is the CEO, the integrator is the COO.
Yeah.
And when we think of visionary in that container, it's like 20 new ideas and strategic partnerships and culture and vision, mission, values, and all of that. And if you subscribe to some level of thinking that we did not create ourselves, there is infinite intelligence. And at some point, I think along most people's journey, you ask the question, who am I? Why am I here?
Yeah.
And when that shift happened for me, it takes a lot of pressure off. Like, you're no longer in this performance perfection trap. You're in this alignment journey. You're on this quest to stay aligned.
Yeah.
And going back to the work that you do, that's embodiment. It's getting your body into full alignment and then using all of our logic, which is our skills, to make it happen. It's a beautiful journey.
It is. People, when they've been asking me lately, how am I? My answer has been consistently, I'm in a deep state of gratitude, because I just feel this like loving, bubbly, beautiful energy around me. And I'm like, this feels amazing. Like, I like it here.
Yes.
And I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful because, and I don't know if you've ever had these moments in your life, but I'm experiencing one, I feel like, for the first time, where, I mean, they've been happening over the years, but I wasn't as aware as I'm like consciously aware of what's happening. And it's like, I am ascending, right? Like I can feel the ascension, the like shift in vibration. And it's just like, this is nice. Like I'm stepping into a different portal, but it's not scary. It used to be scary, right? It used to be scary to step fully into what I was being called to. Cause like, can I handle this? And so I would always like self-sabotage and retreat and then have to go back through the journey again. And so as I'm feeling it happen and like I'm starting to see all of the things that I've been praying for start to come to fruition, it's like, oh, this is nice. Like it feels good here. So I don't know if you've ever had moments like that.
A lot. The synchronicities and the feeling of being upgraded.
Yeah. Oof. The feeling of being upgraded. Damn, that's good. Yeah. I like it here.
Yeah. And it is it's a gift of grace. It's a beautiful gift of grace. And I like what you said, just like wrapped in like, I call it wrapped in a bubble of grace. Like you are just bouncing through life, wrapped in a bubble of grace. And the divine is bringing encounters across your path for you to say thank you.
For you to say thank you. And don't forget the thank you. Don't forget the thank you. Like, don't forget the gratitude. I think that's easy, right? When we start to get the things, we get so like caught up in the things, like, oh, they're happening and life is moving. And I'm trying to be so intentional about saying thank you for all of the things, right? Because it's just like every time a new call is on my calendar, I'm like, thank you. Every time I have a beautiful conversation with a potential client, I'm thanking spirit, because it's just like, this feels amazing. Like it feels amazing to be here, but also to be here and to be ready to be here, right? Like, thank you.
Feeling equipped for the calling.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what would you define success to be?
Whew. This definition has shifted so much for me over the years. I think, like most people, right, we grow up and we get shown this picture of success. And I will speak specifically for like us in, America. It's like the you go to school, you go to college, you find your person, right? You get married, you have the children. Somewhere in there, you get the house and the white picket fence and maybe a dog, and like you get this job, and you keep that job, and maybe you get another job, but like just check the boxes. And I was just doing all of the things, and I was so unhappy with that version of myself, right? And the mask that I was wearing as I was operating as that version of myself. Success now for me is freedom. Like
Mm.
I that is what I'm working towards, right? The freedom to move through life and the world the way that I want to with the people that I love. And like, yes, money is a means to do that thing. And so obviously like it has to come, it will come, you attract what you need. But I don't like I don't care about the financial thing, the number, right? Like I'm not none of that. It doesn't matter. I just want to be free. Like I just want to be able to move through the world freely. And I'm working right now to build the life that allows me to do that. And I already have so many freedoms, right? So it's not like there's this like space that I get to. But that's success, right? And that's what motivates me. And I think that I love this question because I think it's important for each of us to identify for ourselves what success is for us. Because if you are not motivated by money, and that's what everyone is telling you that you need to be focused on, like it's not really driving you the same, right? And so you have to be able to define your own successors and your own measures and markers, because, then you set your own bar, right? You set your own bar, and that is what keeps you motivated and fulfilled along the journey. And that looks different for each of us, right? And so that would be my answer to that question.
Mm. That freedom is one of my highest values, so I
Yeah.
resonate so much.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
also, for those who might be listening who feel like they don't know
Yeah.
what success is to them, maybe they do think it is money, and maybe they
Mhm.
do think it's mansions and
Yeah.
material
Yeah.
things. And sometimes I feel like humans benefit from experience.
Mm.
We learn a lot from experience. So maybe if you climb that ladder, then you actually viscerally know
Mm-hmm.
it didn't create freedom.
Mm.
It's like, I got the money, I got the mansion,
Yeah.
I got the things, but it
Yeah.
didn't feel like I thought it was going to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to reinvent
Mm-hmm.
and decide to solve for inner freedom, which is very different than external freedom. Inner
Yeah.
freedom feels like peace. It feels like inner
Mm.
congruence. It feels like alignment. It feels like
Mm.
clarity. It feels like the permission to say no,
Yeah.
which feels so different than
Mm.
having the external wins, but not the internal freedom.
Mm. Ooh, something else is coming up for me right now as you say it. What is my definition of success? It is also for me, so it is freedom, but it is also being in a space where I finally feel like I have the freedom to move through the world as who I truly am. Because for so long I wore a mask and I was who I thought I needed to be. And I would go out into the world and be this version of myself. And I always say it's like you step out and you put on a show and you're in a play. And then the curtain closes and all of the self-doubt and the limiting beliefs and the unworthiness and like the you're not good enough starts to kick in, and you're working so hard to mask that voice. Like that's really what you're doing. I'm working to prove to myself, right? And to everyone else that I'm enough. And success for me is actually being able to quiet that voice, right? That like I feel not that I don't have those moments, but they don't overtake me in the way that they used to. And like that for me is success, that I'm genuinely good with the person that I'm becoming. And like I'm genuinely feeling good about who I am in this moment. So like feeling good with myself, loving on myself, like that too for me is success.
I love this. You're a beautiful soul.
Thank
I love
you.
how
You
you're
too.
moving through the world. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah. So the greatest place is my website, which is domrclifton.com. And there's two things I want to point out there for folks. The first thing is that I send a daily newsletter. It's a entrepreneurship, spirituality based newsletter. So I talk about business and all the things that we've been talking about today, like the merging of the spiritual and the logical, right? And what that looks like. That's daily, and that's a resource and a tool for folks on their journey. And then also for anyone that's listening to this that is an entrepreneur and you can relate to the stuckness and some of the things that we talked about during the conversation today, the misalignment, right? And you're not sure of like, how do I get out of this? And like, what is holding me back? Because that was me for a long time where I couldn't see how I was holding myself back. I was guided to to take all of my experiences and put them into a quiz to help you figure out like, what is the thing that's holding me up? And there's 13 different archetypes that we usually get stuck in as entrepreneurs when we, haven't worked through completely the limiting beliefs and all the things. And so you can take this free quiz. I said all that to say you can take the entrepreneurial clarity assessment and it'll give you guidance on where you are getting stuck. And then from there, if you're open and you want to talk about it and go deeper on it and, kind of figure out how do I get out of this space, you can schedule a clarity call with me, which is a part of the quiz. But those would be the two places that I would send folks who want to learn more and connect.
I love it. And we'll put all of that in the show notes as well. And what projects are you working on that you're excited about?
I love this question. So normally, I would be doing all the things at one time. And I am kind of still doing a few things, but my, again, intention for this year, I had two. The first one we talked about joy. The second one is consistency in my business, right? Because I have been an entrepreneur for many years, but I have started and stopped a lot of projects. I've gotten shiny object syndrome. I've been stuck in this place of learning and learning and learning and all the over consuming of information. And this year I was like, I just want to be consistent with one thing. And so this year I am just actively focused on, I'm maintaining Move and Still, which is my B2B business, but I'm putting everything into my coaching business. And I feel so good about just like the one thing, right? Just this is it. And I've been saying no to invitations for things because I'm like, I'm over here, right? And so my one project that I am excited about is building building up Transformation University and really like being in the assignment that Spirit has entrusted to me.
I love that. Well, I will be rooting for you.
Thank
You're an
you.
amazing soul on an incredible journey. And I'm excited for your courage to step into who you're being called to be. The courage to go through the messy that makes you become it. And what is in store for you. It's going to be magical and amazing. And you are uniquely called to it and will be equipped for it. So
thank you so much. I feel like this conversation was like a hug. Like I just feel so much joy as we are hanging up today. So it was so amazing to connect with you.
Yes. So to everyone who's listening, we hope you feel wrapped in a bubble and a warm hug from both of us. We are rooting for you as you become the leader that you need to be, to build the business that you want, to create the freedom that you're seeking, and success in whatever way you define it. And remember, staying rooted in yourself and in your community is the quickest path to transforming your business. Cheers, y'all.